On Saturday, the Louisville football team will look to snap a 5-game losing streak to the Kentucky Wildcats.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my 5th year covering the university, 3rd year hosting this show. And I want to take the time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. Now, guys, today's episode of the show brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Joining me for the final regular season game of the season, my weekly co-host, former University of Louisville football recruiting assistant Grant Mulligan. G-Money, what's going on, man? Hope you had a good Thanksgiving, and I hope the good vibes continue on through tomorrow.
Hey, it's rivalry week. It's hate week, okay? It's renewal of one of the best rivalries in sports. Oh, yeah. Most people think basketball, and that is true. But it's the UK, U of L. Gets me hyped every single year. This year is no exception. We need this win so bad. Yes. In an indescribable way.
Indeed, Louisville does need this win. The Cardinals have not won this matchup since 2017 when Lamar Jackson was still a Louisville Cardinal. We'll explain what's at stake for the Cardinals. We'll discuss the keys to victory, and then we will have a UK U of L buy-sell game edition. So the buy-sell will be directly pertaining to this game, one buy-sell each. Am I going to win it again? Or is Grant going to finally, get back up to the level that he needs to be on? But nonetheless, we'll trash talk at the end of the show. Grant, you said Louisville needs to win this game. I would argue that Jeff Brom needs to win this game. There's a lot going here in terms of narratives, in terms of trying to end the season on a good note. What would you say is the most important thing in terms of what's at stake for the Cardinals in this matchup?
I want to make no mistakes about it. This is the most important game, we're at limited remaining availability for games anyways. But it has been for a while. This is the most important game we have remaining of the season for sure, but of the season period. We're not playing for a conference championship. We lost the right to that whenever we dropped a couple clunkers. The bowl game we have, whatever bowl game we may have, does not matter as much as what's going to happen here on Saturday.
Is anyone arguing the contrary?
What?
Is anyone arguing the contrary?
You said what's at stake. I'm just laying the foundation of what's at stake.
Go ahead.
This is one of the most down years Kentucky has had in the Stoops era since they've been good.
Yeah.
And if they come out, because they already got us last year in what was our best year since we had been on the slide. Mm-hmm. Okay, we won 10 games. We were playing for ACC championship at that point. We already knew it. We were ranked 10 in the country and lost. And they were a better team last year than they were this year. This is the most down they've been since they started being good. And if they come out and they beat us, and we're not the team we were last year, but if they come out and beat us with the most down team they've had, we don't get to make the argument that we still have some kind of ownership to Big Brother. I don't care about recent record, about how many we won in a row in the early 2010s. We're little brother in football, just plain and simple. And a lot of people will still say that that's the case already. We still have an argument, but I think if they beat us with one of their most down teams, and while we're a nationally ranked team with some pretty good wins, despite the clunkers, we're little brother. And one win is not going to flip that either. Like if we lose this one and come out and win next year, that's not undone. This has to begin now, or the narrative is locked in for years, and that's not hyperbole.
No, I don't think it is. You can't keep kicking the can down the road. You have to sort of stop the bleeding now, so to speak. I mean, 2018-19, you knew you were going to lose. 2021, you were still projected to lose. Same with 22. 2023 was, Brom's first year last year. I mean, I would argue that Louisville was 100% the better team, but they did what they couldn't do, and that's shoot themselves in the foot. They turned the ball over too many times. They gave up too many big plays. And for those Kentucky fans that will hop on here and say, well, scoreboard, well, duh, that's the only thing that matters at the end of the day. It doesn't matter who you think is the better team. The only thing that matters is what's on the scoreboard when that final clock hits 0. And that's kind of where, there's this whole notion among Louisville fans that this is Kentucky's Super Bowl. Louisville fans will call Kentucky, they'll say that Louisville is their Super Bowl, and it's meant to be a shot at them, right? When I say it, I said it last year. I tried to make it very clear that it wasn't really disrespectful in intention. It was more so the contrary. I think it's an ultimate sign of respect because you have a coach that is quite unpopular at the school down the road. Mark Stoops is not doing himself any favors. Even when Kentucky isn't as good as they usually are, what do they always do? They always get up for this game. They're always ready. They're always making this the most important game of the season at that moment. And people will say, well, it's not the most important game. Sure, it might not be, but they treat it like that. And that's how rivalry games should be. One thing, or one of the many things that I will discredit about the last coaching staff is they didn't give a damn about this game. They didn't care about this game. It was another normal game on the schedule. Jeff Brom cares about this game, but ultimately you have to show it on the field. You have to show that you can play clean football, go out there with a level head, and channel those emotions in for good. Because let me tell you something, come Saturday, I don't care if Kentucky's 11-0 or 0-11. They're going to play like their heads are on fire, and that is an ultimate sign of respect for them because they get up for a rivalry game, and up until last year, Louisville hasn't been able to do the same thing since 2017.
I wish we would treat it like it's our Super Bowl.
My goodness,
honestly, I wish we would, because not to be too fan shaming on this, but until we are actually contending for playoffs and national, we want to act like we're in that air.
We're not.
We're not.
We're not.
And until we show otherwise, we should treat UK like it's a Super Bowl because it's the most meaningful game we're going to have until we have proven we are actual playoff and national title contenders, which we just haven't done yet. Sometimes the ego gets ahead of us on this, and I don't know where it comes from. The preseason hype is cool. Sometimes we get it. Sometimes we feel we're disrespected by it. We have not shown that that's where we are. We need to be treating this game like it's our Super Bowl. UK doesn't have anything else left to play for. They're not going to make a bowl. And I had it I thought about this a lot. It's okay, are we going to play a team that that they're checked out because they don't have anything left to play for? They can't make a bowl no matter how the rest of the season goes. But then I finally flipped on it because this is what this team has left to play for. This game is it, because they can come out without a bowl win, but they still have something that is to them and should be to us and would be to me more important than a bowl win. A Governor's Cup trophy is more important than any bowl we will get in this postseason. And if Kentucky leaves this season, even without making a postseason game with the Governor's Cup, they had a more successful season than us. I do not care. I do not care how bad they looked against SEC. I don't care.
I mean, that last point, I can see your point because at the end of the day, you're not competing for a national championship, either of these two teams. But I do think that I would much rather have 8-4 than 5-7. But I digress. You can have that conversation all day long. What you're saying is right, is that I think we let overachieving against a lesser schedule in year one cloud where this program is at. Now, can Louisville eventually get to the air that we're hoping they can get to? Yeah, I do think so, but they're not there yet. So if Louisville beats Kentucky and goes 8-4, it's 100,000% a successful season, in my opinion. And what did Louisville fans say at the end of last year and the beginning of this year? Well, I hope we win a lot of games, but I want to beat Kentucky. Like, I think a good amount of the fan base has a good pulse on this. But at the end of the day, I do think that you have to treat this like the Super Bowl. And I don't care what you can replace this with 2 rival games, like Ohio State and Michigan. Those guys go all out in that game. Texas and Oklahoma, it means something. Like, this whole notion that like Louisville is holier than thou of the rivalry game is actually kind of hilarious to me. And I think it just represented the way that the previous coaching staff viewed this game. They didn't have any personal vendetta against Kentucky. I mean, Satterfield and company didn't give a damn about the rivalry game. The only thing he cared about was Stoops throwing L's down against him a couple of years ago. But nonetheless, I digress. Let's talk about how Louisville can win this game. For me, there is one clear thing that the Cardinals, without a doubt, 100% have to do on Saturday, which is tomorrow. I keep calling it Saturday. It is tomorrow. I'll explain what that is when we come back from break on this post-Thanksgiving Day episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Cardinal fans, when Louisville basketball returns home, I'm going to urge you, like I always do, to just give Game Time a chance. Game Time is the official ticket marketplace of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I guarantee you that when you download the app, you're going to be hooked. It's going to be the only ticketing service you utilize. So with the all-in pricing feature that you can toggle on to remove surprise fees at checkout, the panoramic views from your seats, the most protective coverage in the ticketing industry, and much, much more. Do yourself a favor. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Also, before we get into the next segment, I want to take the time to tell you about our friends over at Home Field Apparel. I've talked all season about Home Field Apparel with their Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 box. Well, they still have all of the premium collegiate vintage apparel based out of Indianapolis for all of the colleges that you can think of, including the Louisville Cardinals. When you use my code CARDS24, you'll get 15% off of your order from all of the great stuff that they have. Be sure to check it all out at homefieldapparel.com and look at all the wide selection that they carry, the convenience of online shopping, and it allows you to browse through the various designs and find your perfect gear. Again, that's homefieldapparel.com using my code CARDS24 for 15% off. And into the second segment with my good friend, weekly co-host, former University of Louisville recruiting assistant, Grant Mulligan. Grant, Jeff Brom said it in his pre-Kentucky press conference that records don't matter in this game. Rivalry games, you can throw at everything you think you may know about a team because sometimes it doesn't matter. So we're going to do our best to discuss the keys to victory for Louisville. I'm going to start out with this because I feel like there's one that we have to discuss. Louisville must not drop the ball to start the game like they've done the majority of this season. Outside of the first 2 games with Austin Peay and Jacksonville State, and then outside of that, Louisville did not hold a lead after the first quarter in any game this season until Pittsburgh. I think that I'm not saying that Louisville has to race out to a 21-0 lead, but you best believe Mark Stoops is going to have that team ready to go right out of the gate. The Louisville Cardinals cannot afford to start slow in this game against Kentucky.
I agree with that 100% because let's make no mistake about it that this is the best defense that's on our schedule. It's held much more superior opponents to lesser gains and better offensive lines to lesser gains. Specifically, though they've been gashed by the run recently, and we'll get into that in a minute, they're still an extremely talented defense, and that if we allow them to get settled in early, if we are allowed that defense to get comfortable, pin their ears back, then we are going to be able to we're going to be in a really rough situation for the rest of the game. We have to get that defense on its toes early, often, so that they're not able to key off and take away different weapons of our offense and continue to get us to sputter, because this isn't a defense that is going to allow you to come back into the game easily. So I agree with your point wholeheartedly.
So when you look at this in terms of what Louisville needs to do to sort of get their own, so to speak, against this Kentucky defense, and I hate that Louisville is once again playing Deion Walker, who has left his mark on the game pretty much every time he's played. They've got a really solid pass rush, a very veteran-led linebacking core. And the secondary is a little spotty, but they've got some solid pieces there. What does Louisville need to do offensively to make sure that they succeed in this game?
I started touching on it in my last blurb, and that they've been gashed by the run recently, especially when you look at Tennessee and when you look at Texas. Texas had 2 rushers over 100 yards, both of them averaging over 8 yards a carry. So it seems to be the way to attack them as of late. I don't think that Louisville is going to be able to attack them in the exact same way, because we're talking about 2 NFL level offensive lines, or guys who are NFL graded, who will be playing at the next level. And I just don't think, especially given how it's played this season, I don't think we have that level of an offensive line. I think they have a distinct size advantage on us. Talking about defensive line versus offensive line, it's the bigger, stronger, NFL-ready offensive lines that were able to take advantage of this. But there's still a great point to be drawn in that they were able to be gashed by the run. And even if we aren't gashing them, we have to take the pressure off of Tyler Shough. I think that is the key to victory, because if you let this defensive line and those corners key in on Tyler Shough and on the pass game, let's make no mistake, Maxwell Hairston is going to be the biggest assignment that Ja'Cory Brooks has drawn all season. He's a great player, health depending. But if we get into pass-heavy situations, especially if we find ourselves in a hole early, they're going to be able to tee off on Tyler Shough. I don't see us being able to dig ourselves out of this. So I think run game and quick passing game, being able to make the defensive line have pause in terms of coming with the pass rush, keeping them on their toes, not being able to allow them to key in, is the key to attacking this defense. We cannot rely heavily on the pass game, specifically the long developing pass game. It has to be quick, or it has to be run. We cannot have this defense keying in on us.
Well, you saw Louisville made a point of emphasis in that first half against Pittsburgh that, we're going to throw the ball out in space. Quick throws out to Brooks and to Hicks and to Chris Bell, and let's let them make some, make some plays in space. I think that that's something that Louisville could do. I think that the Cardinals need to play a clean game. I think that one thing you saw last year is they gave up too many big plays. They had too many turnovers. The Jawar Jordan fumble, Jack Plummer's, I don't even know what you want to call that turnover. And then the completely unnecessary penalties, like the unnecessary roughness on Chris Bell. There's so many things that, comes with the emotions of this rivalry, and credit to Kentucky for, the guys that are playing in this game. They've won this game before. They know how to play it. They know how to channel that emotion. There's one thing to have emotion, but there's another thing to channel it into a beneficial playing style for you. So I think that Louisville needs to play a clean game. They have to keep Tyler Shough upright. They have to, I'd say you really can't turn the ball over. And if you do, you can't turn it over more than once, and it can't be in your territory. And also, you can't get penalized this game. I mean, you can't have some unnecessary roughing the passer penalties like you had against Pittsburgh. You can't bail them out. If Kentucky wants to get off the field, damn it, let them. Don't make it any easier for them. So I think that Louisville has to play a relatively clean game to win this.
I agree. It got way too messy at times, and intensity is one thing, but costing the team in terms of yardage is another. Again, this is a game I want to attack in a very intense way. I want emotions to be high. I want us to get up for this, but not to the point where it becomes detrimental. We'll argue that maybe last year, one of the most penalized teams in the nation.
Don't get me started.
A penalty.
Don't get me started.
But we're at their turn.
Brown kickoff return, but I digress. Congrats
as well
on winning that game.
So keeping a level head, playing with emotion is paramount, but keeping a level head about it is 100% going to be how we have to win. We cannot make it easier on them. We have to make them earn it, because we've seen in make them earn it situations, they've faltered. They haven't been able to get wins in that situation. So that's how we have to do it as well. We cannot give this team gifts. They will take it.
Yeah, and making another point before we go to the buy-sell segment of it, it is worth mentioning that on Monday, Mark Stoops announced that Cutter Boley, the freshman, would be starting this game. I think that bodes well for Kentucky, and that's something as a Louisville fan you probably don't want to hear. Boley might not necessarily be the running threat that Vandegrift is, but I think that the passing upside is considerable. Boley didn't have a terrible performance coming in relief against Texas, 10 for 18, 160 yards. He had the interception. He got sacked a couple times as well. I think that if Louisville wants to win this game, they're going to have to bring the pressure against Boley. Boley showed that when he had time, he can make some pretty comfortable throws. And he impressed me with a couple of these throws against Texas, which is a good defense on the road. So I doubt he's rattled in this game, but you have to make it to where, Kentucky is far beyond the sticks to where they can't, get into third and short, fourth and short, because they'll run the ball. And that's something that I worry about sometimes with Louisville. So Cutter Boley starting as a true freshman could go either way, but it seems to give Kentucky fans a ton of juice. But let's go into the final regular season buy-sell game of the year between Grant and I. This is the Governor's Cup edition. I feel like this is one of my better buy-sells ever, Grant. I don't want to be that guy, but I feel like it is, and I'll tell.
You've been that guy for the last 3 episodes we've done together.
Okay, well, this is going to make you think. I promise you. We'll get to that here when we come back on this Friday edition of Locked On Louisville. Cardinal fans, we've been having a great time keeping it locked on right here on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. When I use the FanDuel app, it gives me everything I need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So sometimes when I get a hunch in the middle of the game, I can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Right now, Louisville is about a 3.5-point favorite currently over the Wildcats tomorrow. Be sure to check out all of the college football odds on FanDuel.com. Don't forget, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And into the final segment of the final segment of November, the final segment of the football regular season. There's a lot of finals here, and I'm hoping that I can defeat Grant in the final regular season buy-sell game. Grant, I'll go ahead and start, okay? Since I hyped it up a ton, I think it's up to me to be able to live up to the expectations, right? Is that pretty fair?
Let it roll, man. Let it roll.
Let it roll. Okay. You mentioned Kentucky's rushing defense has gotten gashed over the past couple of weeks. Well, right now, Isaac Brown currently sits at 896 yards with one regular season game remaining. Buy-sell, Isaac Brown will reach or top the 1,000-yard mark in the game against Kentucky on Saturday.
I would love to see it, and I'm buying it. The thing that makes I didn't need to. They've been gashed on the ground, specifically by speedbacks, namely Dylan Sampson whenever he played, the Tennessee speedback, who has been very impressive throughout this season. He ripped them for over 150 yards. Both of the Texas backs, especially Jadon Blue, ripped them for over 100 yards. He's their secondary speedback. That is something they clearly struggle with, even though they have a fearsome offensive or defensive line. The other teams that were able to gash them had superior offensive lines to what we have, but I think that Brom is going to come into this ready, maybe scheme up some run looks that could help alleviate some of the offensive line versus defensive line matchups. And if it's not that, then I think he eclipses 120 total yards for sure. I'm still gonna buy. I think he's gonna get it. I think he's gonna get 1,000 regular season rushing yards. I like where your head's at with that. I think that we're gonna continue it. I think if we're gonna win on any individual player's back that isn't a quarterback, I think it has to be Isaac Brown.
The only reason I thought that it could have gone back and forth is because Tennessee and Texas have far superior offensive lines. And that definitely does play into effect when you look at the fact that, I mean, you're going up against a really good defensive line. And let's also face it, Deion Walker and J.J. Weaver have been banged up. So that's something to focus on, is with those guys back and another week of being fully healthy, Deion Walker in the middle of that defensive line is going to cause fits for this Cardinals offensive line. So you bought it pretty quickly. I'm going to buy it as well. I'm kind of disappointed in myself that I felt like it was that good of a buy sell, but apparently, I'm just well past my prime, or just never got into it to begin with. I'll let you go ahead. Grant, what is your buy sell?
Okay, and first of all, I do want to. I like the thought that you put into that one. And maybe I'm becoming overzealous with it, and I just have a great feeling but Isaac Brown's impressed me so much this season. Enough of that, though. I was trying to make you feel better because I actually really liked it. But I'm gonna say Brom comes out ready for this defensive line in a passing sense, and Tyler Shough only takes 1 or fewer sacks this game.
I'm going to sell that. I think that the first part of your statement, if you would have left it at that, I would have bought it. I do think that Tyler Shough is going to get sacked more than once this game, just because the tackle spot, when you bring J.J. Weaver back on that one side, and Weaver's been really good, and maybe he hasn't had the season that Kentucky fans thought he was going to, but Deion Leonard in the middle, and then you have the linebacking core that they have. I think that this defense, there's a reason why they contend with some top teams. Like, they beat Ole Miss. They made it interesting against Tennessee. They made it interesting at times against Texas, and that's because, number one, the offense just sucks the life out of the football, and they have the ball, or in a perfect world, they had the ball for a long time, but defensively, they really disrupt the backfield. And I'm going to sell this because if they're getting pressure on Jackson Dart, and they're getting pressure on Nico Iamaleava and Quinn Ewers, I think that they're going to get pressure on Tyler Shough. And at times, Tyler, when he's indecisive, tends to hold on to the ball a little bit longer than we would hope. So I'm going to sell this. I think I'm going to buy the first part of your statement, but I'm going to sell the Tyler Shough portion.
The only reason I tend towards it is what we talked about earlier in the chat. I hope that Brom kind of throws the long developing passing game out the window for this one. I hope that we go quick game. I hope we go ground game. I hope that the focus is to have this defense on their heels, not able to key in on the passer, and we're getting the ball out fast. I'm talking about probably fastest that Plummer. Oh, anyway, that Shough's got it out all season. See, I feel a lot better about Shough being under center. Like, if it was Plummer, I'd be like, okay,
yeah. I feel better with Tyler Shough being under center as well.
Shough, in terms of getting the ball out faster and in terms of everything. But I have the faith in Brom and the offense to see how this defense can be attacked. We've seen the blueprint in the past few. Again, I don't want to make it sound like this is a cakewalk. This is the best defense we will play all season, unless we get some bowl matchup with an even better SEC defense, but I doubt it. But this is an exceptional defense. You have to come ready for it. To me, it's quick passing. It's run game. It's not putting Shough in long developing pass situations. And I think if we can avoid that, because that is really what they prey on, and that's something that some of the other teams that you mentioned, like Tennessee, loves the downfield pass. They love the take a shot.
They have run the ball or throw it deep, and that's literally their playbook.
So with that, you kind of expose Nico to more sacks in those situations, especially against and Texas, of course, with the speedsters they have outside, love to take shots.
It's the same with Dart. I didn't want to interrupt you, but Ole Miss was the same way. It's either they run the ball with Henry Parrish, or they said, screw it, Trey Harris down there somewhere.
Exactly. So we are talking about longer developing downfield passing attacks, which Kentucky is geared to beat or at least match up well against. So I think we have the tools. This is one of those games where I really wish things went differently with Colin Lacey, because I think that his run after catch would have given this defense fits. But also Jamari Johnson out of the tight end position with some juice. But I digress. I think if we go quick game, we go run game, we can keep the pressure off Shough, and I think we can have one or fewer sacks.
The last thing that I'll say is I do think that Louisville, when they're playing a better passer in Cutter Boley than Brock Vandegrift, like now becomes like really important that you don't let Barryon Brown or Dane Key dictate this game like they both can do, and they have done against Louisville in their career, not just once, probably maybe not just twice. Like they get up for this game, and Louisville's secondary has been a little iffy. I think that you have to almost sort of, blanket coverage Barryon Brown, because he's a guy that can flip the script on a game really quickly. And people say, well, he hasn't done that really this year. You have to throw out everything Kentucky has done this year, because it's almost like a brand new team that you're going to be going up against. So that is going to wrap up this Friday edition of the show. I hope that the very next show that we do, we're talking about a Cardinals victory. But until then, we'll see you then. Everyone have a great weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday.